All right, class. I'm going to be doing these chapter videos and probably just putting them in sections so that they'll be shorter than just having a super long lecture. We're going to be talking about, or rather I'm going to be talking about chapter 11, the dominant seventh chord, which I know that this class has already started, but this video can be used for subsequent classes. And so the three big subjects that you see as far as the topics is it says seventh chord, then it says dominant seventh chord, and then it says major hyphen minor. And so first of all, the seventh chord itself is just a regular triad, 1, 3, 5, with a seventh added on top, which means that there's an added note above the fifth, which then would equate to 7 because they're all odd numbers, 1, 3, 5, and 7. And the interval from the root to the seventh degree is a very specific one, and it's an interval of a minor seventh. And so you get that particular sound when you're playing certain types of key, when you're in a certain key, and you start on the 5 chord. But I think maybe a better way for me to describe it is just for you to hear it, and then also recognize the intervals that I'm actually playing. So on the keyboard here, I'm going to play a G7 chord, a G dominant 7 chord. G, B, and then D, and then the F. And that interval here from G is a minor 7. A good way to find the interval of a minor 7 is to go up to the tonic. I'm going G to G, and then I'm going down one whole step from G to find the F. And so maybe a good way for me to show that to you is I'm going to put that on a staff here so you can see it. I'm taking this interval, the G to a G, lowering that down by one whole step to create an interval of a minor 7. Here's a perfect octave here. And that will always produce the interval that you need, regardless. So for example, let's say I started on F. If I went from F to F, here's the sound of F to F. If I go down a whole step from F, it'll end up being an E flat. This note right here, E flat. That would be an interval of a minor 7th. That's the easiest way to get the interval of a minor 7th. You can count up all the way up until you can get to a 7th, but it's a lot easier to go down a whole step from the tonic note up an octave. So that is essentially what you're doing when you're creating a 7th chord, and in particular the dominant 7. So let's talk about why it's called dominant 7. As you know, each scale degree has its own name: tonic, supertonic, mediant, and submediant, and then you go on to subdominant rather, and then dominant. So the interval, if we have, for example, this heading 5, 7, which does mean dominant 7 because 5 is the position of the dominant. If I created that chord from G, and you can see there's an F natural there, we're in the bass clef, that will produce the correct chord for this key, because G7 is the 5/7 of C. And what ends up happening is it is naturally produced. That minor 7 interval is part of the scale. So if you ever go to a 5 chord or a 5/7 in a key, and that could be major or harmonic minor, it will always produce a dominant 7 chord. So for example, let's say I go to the key of B flat. So we have a key signature there of 2 flats, right? B and E. And what would that chord be? It would be F. The 5 of B flat would be F, dominant 7. And the interval here from that note to that note is a minor 7 interval. It's naturally produced. F to E flat. Very characteristic sound. I mean, we hear that very easily in the 20th century because of the blues and really hearing that chord in so many different types of popular music as well as classical. And so that is the reason that it's called a dominant 7. And so we must always use a Roman numeral 5 when we're describing any chord and with analysis that has that characteristic, a major chord that has a minor 7th on top. And then the last subject here is when it's described as a major minor, and that is this situation here. Benward says that the chord is major and then minor. Well, the first M refers to the triad. The next M, the smaller one, refers to the 7th. So any major minor chord equals a dominant 7 chord. And so if I said, what is the equivalent here of this? I got to get rid of this here. Okay. Of, let's say of C. That would be G7. G triad with an added 7 minor 7 interval. Major triad. So that is what is referred to as major minor. That's what they mean. The first part is the triad. Triad. Again, second part, 7th. So I hope that, and I know I'm doing this real time, but I hope that that makes sense when you're looking at something like that. So anytime in Benward they ask for that distinction, major, minor, you're talking about a dominant 7 chord. Okay? All right. Then next I'll go ahead and have different videos regarding the inversions and the numbering for the dominant 7 chord.